Hello, puppies and kittens. Welcome to another episode of Blasphemers Bible. How's everybody doing today?
Happy Hanukkah.
I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
And
Happy Hanukkah.
I was this ready. I was this ready to do Aaron's intro for him because, like, I don't know, he left to go jerk off or something. But I was this ready.
He went to play with his
fucking kill it.
snakes.
I was just ready to kill it, and he's
Accuracy.
like, no, he came back. He came back in time.
All right. Well, I ought to just let you do that next time. All right. Yeah, my wife just informed me there's a Krampus walk this evening in our hometown, and so yeah, I'm probably going to go be Krampus tonight.
See, that's awesome. I just was it last weekend? I went to Krampusnacht. It was this little festival here in Milwaukee. So that was a lot of fun. It was like a parade.
I still think it's hilarious watching the Christian extremists on Twitter when I still occasionally drop by, screaming about how the Satanists are out. The Satanists are out with the. And it's like there's comments like, "This is Krampus, a Santa Christmas character in certain countries." Blah 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 blah. Stop panicking about Satan, you fucking internet news.
The war of Christmas gone wrong.
Your tradition, folks.
In fairness, children are probably safer with Satan than with American evangelical Christians. So,
Okay, so we were doing Deuteronomy 13. Lawrence, do we need a preface on this?
I mean, nothing that we haven't covered before, right? We're just going to have more stuff about like, don't follow those other gods. But I do want to point out that as we kind of go along, and this is throughout the chapters, not just today specifically, but we can compare the 10 commandments with these prescriptions here, and we can I guess in a way condense many of these laws into single laws in the 10 commandments. So we're going to see that a lot of this stuff is just kind of like falling under the same banner, or you could think of it as like a subsection, right? So this gives you a much more expanded version of those laws.
Okay, and who is reading today?
I volunteer Ember.
It has been a minute.
It's gonna need the God voice for this one.
Yeah. All right,
That's
give me a
great.
second to turn it
It
on.
has that. That is so dope. And while Ember figures out technology, after the show, I implore everyone to go watch my new video on the cult of Saint Thecla, because if you haven't heard of Thecla, or as my chat calls her, Thecla, you need to hear the story of Thecla and then the cult surrounding her. So go do that.
Yeah, it's crazy. I watched the video. I've read the Paul and Thecla. It is crazy. Like, just some of the apocryphal shit that did not make it into the New Testament is way more entertaining and way more ridiculous than the stuff that made it in. Like magic shit, the infancy gospels where Jesus is like Damien from The Omen who kills kids for offending him, and then when his father, when Joseph is like, you can't do that shit, he's like, bitch, I will do as I please, and I will not kill you for sassing me this one time. You get one pass, don't abuse it. And this is like a fucking 8-year-old child at best. Like, it's crazy. So yeah, Paul and Thecla, I'm not going to get into and spoiler all the cool shit that happens in Thecla, but it's even crazier. Yeah,
it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it goes to show that some of the earlier Christians were marginally more sensible than some modern Christians. I feel like if they were around back then, they'll be like, yeah, stick it in. That makes sense. That happened.
Totes for real. Yeah.
Yeah, Jesus killed the tree or whatever.
With that, I think we should start reading.
Yep.
All right. 13.
Read up. Yeah, you could finish this chapter. It's like 20 verses long, 18. It depends on the Old Testament.
Ember, what are the
Sorry.
What are the I don't know what you'd call them. The ears.
Oh, they're their horns. Since we're talking about other gods, I figured I should be, you know,
This is
alt
Yahweh.
divinity, something.
This is Yahweh cosplaying as other gods.
Mm.
I like it.
Well, someone needs to
It's
play
God.
the villain.
Maybe he's cosplaying as his gods. It's God's gods.
Mm.
Oh, God can't be
Go watch that
atheist.
episode of whatever his channel is called.
Dark matter.
Yeah, that's it.
Mhm.
Yes.
Thou shalt witness the marvelousness of dark matter 2525.
So let it be written.
Other channels
Okay.
are available.
I do want to say that before you start reading, though, that these two chapters coming up here, I think in the Christian context, we tend to downplay other commandments and other laws because we're so emphasizing the 10 Commandments that we often miss these. And the stuff that we're about to read right now, it's like really controversial. Like, especially when you think of like what's happening in Christianity and.
I'll bring up something.
Yeah.
I'll bring up something about it.
Yeah, I mean, P-Town isn't here, but I think all of us can agree that Jesus is mentioned in this chapter.
Obviously, yeah.
He's mentioned in all the chapters if he's in your heart.
Before you read up, I do have one comment to read first. So that's Matt White says, at Lilith Liberated, lest we forget, Saint Nick, patron saint of children, sailors, and prostitutes. How holy is that?
Well, he did punch Arius in the face, so.
Well, that's
story, yep.
that's a little bit dodgy. Arius wouldn't have been there because he wasn't a bishop. But yeah, Saint Nick is a bit crazy. I kind of think Krampus may be a split personality scenario. So
In Swiss culture, they have a variant called the Bergen, I believe, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And instead of normal Krampus stuff, when Father Christmas comes to the house, the parents show Father Christmas the ledger, whether the child has been good or bad. Santa doesn't have a list; he has to check with the parents. And if the ledger shows red, you've been overall naughty, then Father Christmas leaves, and the Bergen comes and takes the child and throws them in a sack, and they're never seen again. Shit's kind of dark.
So that's what it means to have red in your ledger. Gotcha.
Oh, I'm starting to realize where Christianity got it from.
The IR Bergen is coming.
Okay,
please start reading.
All right, 13.
Hold on. Before you start reading,
Wait.
Before you start reading, I have an announcement. My chat tool isn't working anymore. It's probably that the server is down, so we're working on that. So for now, I can't.
Have you tried Viagra?
I might try that. I don't know if I have something.
Vaseline.
I have to have a look if I can have it delivered.
Give Viagra to a server.
But we're working on it. So I'm hoping that I can. It's working for you? That is weird.
Yeah. Weirdly, mine started working again yesterday. It's been broken for months, but it started working yesterday. And I'm like, okay.
Mine isn't working. That is weird. It's the same tool. That's really weird.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll see if I can fix it. Keep reading.
Yes.
Okay.
Keep reading.
All right. If a prophet or one who foretells by dreams appears among you and announces to you a sign or wonder, and if the sign or wonder spoken of takes place, and the prophet says, let us follow other gods you have not known, and let us worship them, you must not listen to the words of that prophet or dreamer. The Lord your God is testing you to find out whether you love him with all your heart and with all your soul. It is the Lord your God you must follow, and him you must revere. Keep his commands and obey him, serve him, and hold fast to him. That prophet or dreamer must be put to death for inciting rebellion against the Lord your God. who brought you out of Egypt and redeemed you from the land of slavery. That prophet or dreamer tried to turn you from the way the Lord your God has commanded you to follow. You must purge the evil from among you. If your very own brother, or your son or daughter, or the wife you love, or the wife you don't love, or your closet friend secretly entices you, saying, "Let us go and worship other gods, gods that neither you nor your ancestors have known, gods of the peoples around you, whether near or far, from one end of the land to the other, do not yield to them or listen to them. Show them no pity. Do not spare them or shield them. You must certainly put them to death. Your hand must be the first in putting them to death, and then the hands of all the people. Stone them to death, because they tried to turn you away from the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. Then all Israel will hear and be afraid, and no one among you will do such an evil thing again. If you hear it said.
When you talk about things that are being put to death or whatever, can I just, because you're in this voice, can you just throw in "for the glory of the empire"?
Oh.
Please finish the chapter.
Yeah.
Huh?
If you hear it said about one of the towns the Lord your God is giving you to live in, that troublemakers have arisen among you and have led the people of the town astray, saying, "Let us go and worship other gods, gods you have not known," then you must inquire, probe, and investigate it thoroughly. If it is true, and has been proved that this detestable thing has been done among you, you must certainly put to the sword all who live in that town, for the glory of the empire. You must destroy it completely, for the glory of the empire, both its people and its livestock. You are to gather all the plunder of the town into the middle of the public square and completely burn the town and all its plunder as a whole burnt offering to the Lord your God. That town is to remain a ruin forever, never to be rebuilt, and none of the condemned things are to be found in your hands. Then the Lord will turn from his fierce anger, will show you mercy, and will have compassion on you. He will increase your numbers as he promised on oath to your ancestors, because you obey the Lord your God by keeping all his commands that I am giving you today, and doing what is right in his eyes.
I just did a video a couple of days ago where I mentioned that if you found out there are people who don't worship your God, or that they don't worship any God or whatever, have you killed them? If you're truly living by the word, have you murdered those people? And I put in a handful of quotes from the Bible that talk about this, and I completely overlooked this one. This one really should have been in there.
You know, every time we come to this book, and I've known this book my whole life, it doesn't surprise, it always just strikes me with how utterly vile the Bible is. First, if the evidence you are presented with, the evidence of your own eyes and experience and all those around you, is not in line with what you expected, then you're being tested, and you should destroy the people who brought you the evidence. If the people you love disagree with you on matters of religion, if the wife who would have died for you at any time is tired of following this bloody monster and wants to try something else, literally anything else, so your life won't be a perpetual misery of slavery, then you have to kill her publicly.
And her donkey.
Yeah.
You have to kill the whole town and their animals.
Well, that's the third version, yeah.
Yeah,
But
somehow the
individuals
donkey
too.
is guilty of this.
Well,
Mhm.
you know, they're all corrupt with the dirty, I don't know, stain of idol worship.
I mean, it's possible it's just a command like not to take any plunder, because it shouldn't be. You shouldn't do this because you want to steal the city's wealth.
Right. To remove the prophet
Yeah.
as and that
Remove
is
the prophet and the prophet.
Yeah.
remove profit as a motivation for seeking to destroy your neighbors. So you have to do it purely out of malice and cruelty and devotion to clearly a monster.
So I mean, it looks like it's it's only whenever there's like risk of you being caught in the crosshairs of conversion, because like
yeah, but they seem to think that it's like staining everything it touches. So clearly, if you're even in the vicinity, you're at risk.
I mean, just to be clear, like then what I said in no way justifies this. So like it starts off with saying, like, listen, if there's like a prophet or someone who divines by dreams. So in any case, someone who is a diviner, even if they give you a whole bunch of omens that turn out to be right, don't follow them. And
Or
then,
even a miracle, according to some.
yeah,
I
yeah,
just
Yeah.
want to say real quick, Peter, can you please fix the screen?
Oh,
Yeah, I have internet connections for recently, so I'm going to lag out for I don't know when, but it's going to be random. So I'm sorry about that.
I fixed both the screen and the YouTube chat thingy, so everything's working again.
Huzzah!
yeah.
Got another comment to read. Eric Wander says, any commentary on the fact that the Bible says love thy neighbor as thyself in Leviticus 19? How do they justify this? As I understand it, it's love your fellow Jew as yourself. It's only the people within your tribe.
Israelite,
yeah,
but
this chapter is also about only Israelites.
I have a somewhat
Yes,
different
it's
perspective on this.
apostasy rather than
Yeah.
there's nothing about kill the heathen here. Just anybody who turns away from God, from the chosen people, must be extricated, excised like a tumor.
They already killed the heathens in an early episode.
Like if they, because even in the first verse there it says like if they appear among you. So yeah, and then there's the one where like one of your family members is trying to convert you, and then there's this whole there's the case of the whole city, right? But it's that if you hear it said about one of the towns that the Lord your God is giving you to live in, so one of the places that's supposed to be God's,
The Jewish city,
that scoundrels from among you have gone out. So again, like people who are supposed to be Israelites in faith, and they go out and do that and convert the whole town. Well, you got to kill the whole town. So it's generally about apostasy more specifically. But what I do
Interestingly, it's not private apostasy. There's nothing seems to be against like private apostasy.
Well, that's not true, because remember the first is just to kill the individual who apostatizes and wants to share their faith with their immediate family. So presumably if they never told anybody and never did anything in public, but like again, I still don't think they would be in any sense spared. But as far as the question of love your neighbor as you love yourself, I think the best way to respond to that is to say, how precisely are they told to love themselves?
I love myself at least twice a day.
Yeah,
you should love yourself as much as your neighbor.
Clearly, that's not the kind of love God means. After all, whether you want to take the Jesus version or this version, the love that God is talking about is clearly slavery to him and the rigid enforcement of it internally and externally. So to love your neighbor as yourself means to do unto them as you would do unto yourself. And you're meant to keep yourself enslaved as well as your neighbor. It's a wonderful self-perpetuating system of horror and misery and mental slavery and every other kind of slavery. So, love.
Yeah, the cult self-reinforces. On the note of slavery, I found it interesting that the person speaking for Yahweh in this instance, presumably Moses, I suppose, mentions twice the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of slavery, out of Egypt, and then later on gleefully has them all enslaved to the Babylonians.
Well, they weren't appropriately enslaved to him, so obviously they had to be enslaved to the Babylonians then.
Yeah, obviously. Come on, Ember. Like you should know that's
they were uppity.
Morality
he sold
right
them to
there.
a crueler master. That's what you do.
I should note that Martin Luther, he used verse 16, which I think in the Hebrew Bible is verse 17, to justify burning synagogues, and that if Moses was still alive, quote, he would be the first to set fire to the synagogues and the houses of the Jews, end quote, which is...
Oh, I mean, that might
quite
be
bizarre.
like, that's probably connected to, because especially for someone like Martin Luther, right?
It was on the Jews and their lies. It's in his anti-Semitic rant.
It's one of his later writings.
Yes,
when the Jews did not immediately lob on to his new version of Christianity, which had been cleansed of the evil impurities of the Catholic Church, he was quite willing to, well, actually, he laid out basically the Reich's plan, sans the oven bit. Pretty much everything the Third Reich did, he had pretty much already laid out in that book. And I know because I've read it.
Interesting. It's an interesting chapter to cherry pick from for a Christian, because the beginning of the chapter, to me, is like, you should not add or take away. And if there is a prophet among you, if they give you signs to lead other gods, like that seems to me like Christianity kind of fits that description, because they're adding to the number of
another
gods.
prophet who steers you wrong. It's,
well,
there's a lot
they
of
would
things
still believe
like
that it's the same God, right? So, because
but
the
they're
way
adding
that
from 1
Christians
to 3.
and for that matter Muslims as well, like they view themselves as like having the true, unadulterated faith, essentially.
They're gonna appeal to some etymological, common root like the Jah or whatever. But it to me, it's very clear that this is about a specific God with a specific name. So how could you, deviate from that? It's not just a God concept, but a personal being. That's someone that's got an identity that's very clear, that's very tied to a land, to a people, to certain ancestors. So yeah, I mean, anything outside of that should be and would be considered idolatry from this Deuteronomistic perspective.
Absolutely. But I mean, we've all seen, whether from P-Town or far more exalted theologians, how theology is a game of Calvin ball and finding an excuse for why when you do a thing, it isn't the same as when everyone else does a thing. And I mean, but the point does remain. If a God took a people and made an exclusive pact with them and insisted that if anyone came and preached a different gospel or a different word or tried to change their method of worship in any way, they must kill that person regardless of whether or not they did signs or miracles. And then that same God came down as a person among them and performed signs and miracles and taught a different theology, and they killed him. Would you not say that God reaped exactly what he sowed?
It's I get a little bit stuck on the prophecies and portents come true, which you would think gives veracity to the claims of this person, but I've missed bits and pieces here and there over the months, but this is one of the earlier places, if not the earliest, where it's Yahweh claiming responsibility with like the lying spirits and whatnot. It's not really another God. It's me testing you.
Even if it comes,
that's a little different.
even if there's a false prophet that can do a miracle or can pass omens that come true or whatever, it's just God testing you.
Yeah. And yet the test for a prophet of Yahweh is whether or not what they say comes true. So if they say, I am speaking on behalf of Yahweh, and they make a prophecy and it doesn't come true, you're to kill them as a false prophet. But if they say, I'm speaking on behalf of this other God, and they make a prophecy and their prophecy does come true, you're to kill them as a false prophet. Heads I win, tails you lose.
It's why not just ban
if someone
prophecy?
wasn't an actual prophet, if someone wasn't an actual prophet, but he was, wasn't trying to take them away from God, but he was trying to say like, oh, worship the same God, but give me money, he wouldn't be, God wouldn't give him powers. That's the idea.
Well, no, that's, I mean, with prophecy, sometimes it's just being able to see around a corner other people can't. And it's very easy to, enough showmanship can convince people of a lot of strange things. But then it's just, it makes it absurd and pointless when you say the prophet has come and spoken in the name of Yahweh, and they gave a prophecy and it came true. So this is evidence of Yahweh. It's like, no matter what the end result was, you were going to take it as evidence of Yahweh and kill anyone who provided any evidence that didn't line up with your beliefs anyway. So how is this now evidence if this one guy who says Yahweh makes a good prediction?
Also, let's not forget that in 1 Kings 22, Yahweh sends lying spirits into the mouths of opposing prophets, where he puts lying words in their mouth, essentially.
Yeah, if he can make them wrong, then the fact that they predict something that's true,
right?
It's a semi-contradiction, I suppose.
I would say I was confused by that, except that the Bible says that God is not the author of confusion.
Oh, right.
Apparently, he's just the father of lies.
It's a Exodus.
Yeah, it
no,
seems
not
to be
Exodus.
a theological.
Dude, I forget which verse it is. I'm so bad at remembering verses.
Yeah, I got into a
conversation.
Seems
to be like an
Very often, my elderly mother would try to defend religion, and she's recently given up on that. I mean, and I was talking with somebody about this video that I'd done where we were talking about lies in the Bible, and she says, "Well, it says you're not supposed to lie." And I'm like, "Yeah, but the Bible also has God bragging about lying." She says, "Oh, okay, well."
Yeah.
I love how she's come to the point where if he says it's in the Bible, it's there. Just don't argue.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think maybe this is like a theological explanation for how do prophets of other gods, how are they able to do these signs and miracles or whatever? And this is saying, oh, God does it on purpose. He's giving these prophets powers or whatever so that he may trick you into following them.
That's a very theological line of thought. It's kind of funny because it's led to a lot of absurd ideas. I know you've run into this in creationist circles, Aaron, but basically, if your claims rest on a certain level of evidence, then at least you have to ostensibly accept any claim that meets a similar standard of evidence, which has led to Christians, taking in all kinds of claims, including aliens. And then they have to fit it into their theology, which is why in the 70s and 80s in particular, but even to this day, many fundamentalist Christians believe that alien sightings and probings and all that magic is real. It's just demons.
Yeah, and I think
all demons.
You were to ask I think when you ask a Christian, like, how do Hindus heal people with in these, in this place or whatever, they'll be like, yeah, that's God testing us by giving the demons the power to heal people in the name of other gods, and we know that they're false because they're going against Scripture or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, next door to my tattoo shop, there was there was one of those churches that had their logo was the world on fire. And so one of these real extremist groups speaking in tongues and all that kind of thing. And as they're letting out one night, and I happened to be, I didn't have anybody scheduled that night. I step outside, they step outside, and then the congregation turns on me, trying to evangelize to me. And they invite me in so they can show healings. And I'm like, oh yeah, I saw that. These African pagans doing their healing rituals, and they say, oh, well, that's the devil's work. I'm like, it's healing, isn't it? and that alone, they're dumbfounded. was not another word out of it. The argument was over with that. They didn't know how to address that. How can they be healing?
Yeah, I mean, if the devil is going to help out amputees and Yahweh isn't, then maybe the devil's more worthy of worship. I don't know.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Kind of jumping off what Lilith said before, right? So I remember posting something on Facebook where and like this actually I got a good amount of pushback from atheists on this because I was like, trying to do an actual analysis of Revelation. And they were like, it was just drugs. Don't you get it? They were just high the whole time. And I'm like, that's such a cop out of like historiography. That's like such a, like this easy way out of actually trying to understand something. Just say they were high. So I got into it with these guys, and then I was sometimes questioning myself, like, am I the crazy one? But then I noticed that he also said that he thinks that ancient people only believed in gods because we were visited by aliens, and they thought that those aliens were gods. And I'm like, you know what? I'm fine. So
I had a conversation with my dad. I had a conversation with my dad over Thanksgiving break, and he's very wishy-washy in his faith, has always been. And now the latest thing is, because I was like trying to hone in on the whole ascension, like how do you explain Jesus ascending into the heavens and whatnot? Like, we know what's up there, and we know what happens to the body once you get up to a certain altitude and whatnot. And his answer was, well, I just think that he was an alien, so he was just taken back, And so I'm like, so now you got to prove, now you need to demonstrate not only that Jesus exists, but that aliens are real. And how do you know that was actually the case? It's just, it's just horrible.
Well, or maybe the angels time traveled, got a NASA spacesuit, and were holding it for him to jump into once he got out of visual range of his apostles.
Right.
Yeah. I was going to say that the same line of thinking that leads people to think like, oh, Ezekiel had to be on drugs to write this down or whatever. It's like, oh, ancient people don't have imaginations, they can't write fiction or whatever. Like, it's the same line of thinking that like, oh, you need ancient aliens to explain like big buildings. And
well, drugs
in
exist.
this case, even
piles of rocks.
Yes.
Must be aliens.
And people do see weird shit on them. I'm not saying all prophecies have been the result of drugs, but I'm sure that's been part of it sometimes. Anyway, I'll be right back. More coffee, because I don't think I can handle the Bible without it.
Okay, coffee, rum, whatever. Yeah.
Are we going to jump into 14?
I have commentary, fortunately for you.
Is there?
Arnaz comments
I am
too.
shocked.
Yeah, comments as well.
Arnaz comments too.
Okay, so yep, I've read that one. Trevor Wright says, no one is born a believer in God. It's always taught by someone else. Yeah, we're all atheists until someone lies to us. And then Saleman offers $5 and says, hey, when racists use the Bible to justify segregation, where does the Bible say that?
Oh, well.
Well, they say that Israelites should only marry Israelites, but that's about it. Probably.
Yeah, there's that. And the thing is, it doesn't say that. There are times where it's very clear that they view other people as, lesser, like at least some people, right? So for example, Jesus even, I think there's this Canaanite woman that comes up to him and he calls her a dog because of she's a Canaanite. And it's very clear that they were kind of racist in the ancient world, but not in the exact same way that the racists are today.
Yeah, it's not really race-based. It's
It's
nationality.
It's not other races are bad. It's my people are best, and everyone else sucks.
Yeah, xenophobia.
Group
And then there is the case of during the transatlantic slave trade, the way that they justified thinking of Black people as lesser was saying that, the mark of Cain in Genesis was actually dark skin.
Was that in the Mormon?
Was that what?
Is that in the Mormon church? I think I've heard that about the Mormons.
It might be in the Mormon church, but
it
was also used
isn't
way
there
before.
Oh,
Isn't
wow.
there like a more general idea of Canaan was cast by Noah, and so the Hamites,
Yeah,
descendants
the
of
curse of
Ham,
Ham. That's a
yeah,
it's
because
an
of
interesting thing
his
because I've
son
heard
Canaan.
the curse
But
of
then
Cain
Egyptians are also from
being white
Ham,
faces.
so
Yeah, it's as I understand it,
it doesn't really
and
make sense. Like Canaan
yeah,
and Egypt are supposed to be from Ham, but they're not
yeah,
shown to be
all
gods.
of
It's much
Africa.
later.
See, Ham was the father of the African race, and another son was the father of the Arab race, and another son was the father of the white race. Not that there even was such a thing at the time.
It doesn't.
just
Yeah, it's pretty difficult to make it work with any system. So there's three sons, and what traditionally Ham is Ham is the father of all the
Canaanites.
Africans, and Shem is the father of all the Semites, like Hebrews, Babylonians, and Arabs. But then there's one
Canaan
other
was
son.
the son
And
of
how is that supposed to
Ham.
be everyone else in the world?
One of our history books here in
Yes.
Texas,
It
one of our
doesn't
history
really make
books here in Texas said that that Egypt and well Africa in general was populated by a Hamitic race,
That's
meaning
based
the
on the
sons of
Bible.
Ham.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
know why the wife of Ham in The Greatest Adventure cartoon, when I was a child, looked vaguely black, but not actually black. She just had curly hair and slightly more tan, but not too much. Now it makes sense.
Yeah, but
They
ostensibly
did
that
it.
passage says that Ham and his descendants will be cursed forever to be hewers of wood and drawers of water, which apparently means slave. But that's relatively easy to refute by the person living today named Ham, whose favorite phrase is were you there?
Also, the idea that Ham was the father of the Africans is more of a white colonialist racist idea, because in the original schematic, the son of Ham was Canaan, who is why the peoples of Palestine were cursed to be the slaves of Israel, and they were going to go in and kill them all because they were cursed.
That's the original. That's probably the original reason
version.
for that.
Yeah,
story.
the racists came up with a new narrative.
Yeah. The funny thing is that traditionally, like Europeans actually, well, some will say the Europeans, some of them come from the third son, but others say that they actually come from, like Romans come from Edom, like from Esau. So they're technically Semitic.
Much later, so they would be Semitic, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's quite funny.
Yeah, the most white Europeans claim themselves to be sons of Jephthah, who God shall persuade to dwell in the tents of Shem, and spiritually, Christians would consider themselves that.
Yeah, it's funny.
Okay, I'll think I'll start my commentary. So now, because the Hebrew Bible and the Old Testament don't really align here, I'm going to say verse 1, which is verse 2 in the Hebrew Bible, and I'll say verse 1, which is verse 2, to annoy Aaron. So,
You can just say one or the other. Like,
no,
maybe just do
I'm just going to be consistent. So,
precision of language is important.
Yeah. So on verse 1, which is 2, prophet. Targum Suda Jonathan reads, a false prophet, and Sadigon, one who claims prophecy. Now, Commentators writes that this refers either to a person who claims to be a prophet, but it is obvious that he is lying, or that it's a person with supernatural powers who foretells the future using his mystical powers. Lundbom writes that the prophet here could be any prophet, either of Yahweh or of some other god. The present text and the one in 18 verses 15 to 22 are the only legal texts of the Old Testament that deal with prophets and prophecy. He writes that it could reflect the time when false prophecy became a serious problem in northern Israel, specifically during Ahab's reign. And on
that's Ahab in English, right?
Yes, I know, but they don't know the chet. So one who foretells by dreams. In Hebrew, it's cholem chalom, literally dreamer of a dream. This is rendered by Vulgate, Targum Onkelos, and KJV. The Septuagint reads divines by a dream, and Tigay notes that the Bible tells of both prophets and non-prophets who received revelation through dreams. This phenomenon was also common in the ancient Near East. Lundbom writes that this title could be another name for a prophet, as seen in Jeremiah 23, verses 25 to 28. And Targums Pseudo Jonathan reads, dreamer of a profane dream.
I mean, literally, it's like dream to dream, right?
Yeah, dreamer of a dream. Cholem chalom.
Ah, so there's a prophecy about Martin Luther King.
It came true. Holy crap.
On the sign or wonder, the Hebrew it's ot or mofet. While some argued that the two terms are synonymous, like Sifrei Numbers 23, Tigay, and Lundbom, others differentiate between the two. Rashi wrote that sign in Hebrew ot is a sign given in the heavens, seen in Judges 6:17, and a wonder, mofet, is a sign given on earth. Nachmanides writes that sign, quote unquote, is a natural phenomenon serving as a symbol of something similar that will take place afterwards, and a wonder, quote unquote, is a change of the natural order of the world. Nelson writes that sign seems to highlight confirmation, whereas wonder emphasizes the miraculous quality of a prophetic deed, as found in Exodus 4:21 and in 1 Kings 13, verses 3 and 5.
That reminds me. Last night I had a dream that I had to escape a zombie apocalypse by hiding in my time capsule submarine.
Oh, well, I don't think that counts as a profane dream.
It may be prophetic, though. I mean, zombies aren't renowned to be good swimmers.
And we are going through like several different kinds of apocalypse for the last 3 years, and my main complaint has been that there has been no zombies.
Oh no!
Well,
there's plenty of them. There's plenty of them. Just go to a Trump rally.
They all vote blue.
Thanks. I prefer not to be groped by sweaty old men.
Wait, I did the wrong color, didn't I? Because Americans have it backwards for some reason.
Yes. In the 2000 election, red and blue were the correct way around, and then in 2004, it was inexplicably all the networks, CNN, Fox, ABC, they all switched what was red and what was blue, and now it's been backwards ever since.
Oh no, it's far earlier than that. The red-blue shift is when the ideological switch that the Republicans pretend never happened because they want to claim Lincoln and all the liberal Republicans from way before. But the fact that they got their red-blue color scheme from the UK and from all the members of the Commonwealth who all have blue as the conservative color and red as the liberal color, and they themselves were bitching about the red menace of communism, which is left, kind of gives the lie to their bullshit. But, you know, it's not like conservative people are ever going to be honest.
Expecting consistency from theologues may be asking too much.
Okay, please.
Okay, I'll continue. On verse 2, which is 3, gods you have not known. Nelson notes that never known means not experienced or having had close relationship to. It describes the opposite of the God known through the Exodus. On verse 3, which is 4, Lundbom comments, Yahweh is testing people for their love toward him, a key theme in Deuteronomy, and to determine this, he gives individuals not in his service temporary success, but it is a success that will not last. We recall that from the magicians of Egypt, Yahweh wrung a confession of faith once their power to perform signs and wonders was gone. They said, "This is the finger of God," in Exodus 8:15, which is 19 in the Old Testament, I believe. In the New Testament, false prophets are promised. In the New Testament, false prophets are promised who will show great signs and wonders, the purpose of which will be to lead people astray. Matthew 24:24. Also, the beast of Revelation will work great signs in order to deceive people into idolatrous worship. Revelation 13 verses 13 to 14. End quote. And also, Augustine on 83 Varied Question 60 writes, this manner of speaking does not mean that God does not know. Rather, it was said in order that people might know how far they have progressed in the love of God, a thing which is not fully recognized by them except by way of the tests which come about. As for the expression, he puts to the test, it means that God permits testing. Therefore, when it is also said that God does not know, this means either that he does not approve, i.e. does not recognize as conformable to his discipline and teaching, or that he causes people not to know for their own good, because it serves no useful purpose for them to know. On verse 5, which is 6, inciting rebellion against the Lord your God. Inciting rebellion is derived from Sarah. Peshitta reads spoke evil, Vulgate spoke to draw you away, Sadekon and Tigay render lie, and Rashi something cast out of the universe, non-existent, never created, I never told him to say it. Nelson renders spoken treason, based on the Akkadian surate found in Assyrian loyalty oaths. On you must purge the evil from among you, Weinfeld comments, this phrase is found only in Deuteronomy and reflects the special perception of this book. In the priestly literature, we find expressions of punishment, such as shall bear his guilt in Leviticus 19:8 and 20:17, or shall be cut off from his kin, Exodus 12:15, 31:14, Leviticus 7:20, etc. According to these expressions, the criminal carries the burden of guilt and shame on himself, and the social frame he lives in ejects him. Whereas, according to the phrase in Deuteronomy, the criminal is not ejected from his people, but the people must denounce and banish him from them intentionally and proactively. The educational trend of Deuteronomy is emphasized here and in verse 12. See also 17:13, 19:20, 21:21. These texts emphasize the educational purpose of the punishment. And Septuagint, Targums, and Tzaddik On read, you must eliminate the evildoer from within you. On verse 6, which is 7, if your very own brother. The Hebrew Bible reads, if your brother, the son of your mother. Tigay writes that this refers to the most closely related brother. The Samaritan text, Septuagint, Peshitta, and Temple Scroll read, your brother from your father or from your mother. McCarthy writes that it could possibly reflect an incomplete understanding of the internal relationships within a polygamous marriage situation in earlier times. She further writes, the qualifications of the wife as, quote, one who sleeps in your bosom, end quote, and the friend, quote, who is like your soul, end quote, illustrate that the author here is confining the examples to very intimate relationships, which, in the polygamous family, would include sons of the same mother. That Samaritan text and Septuagint reflect an ancient secondary textual development, possibly influenced by later exegetical traditions concerning the incest law in Leviticus 18:9, is argued by Levinson, who also notes that the, quote, the apposition that defines the brother in relation to both the father and the mother is found only in the Second Temple period literature that specifically marks the reception, translation, and reinterpretation of Deuteronomy 13:7, end quote. On verse 9, which is 10, you must certainly put them to death. The Septuagint reads, reporting, you shall report concerning him. Nelson writes that Septuagint harmonizes with the procedures of 17 verses 2 to 7, offering a reading derived from a confusion of Dalet and Resh, combined with a reversal of letters, meaning Haged instead of Harog. McCarthy notes Levinson's opinion that the Septuagint omits to, quote, translators who are actively embedding normative Second Temple halacha into their rendering, end quote. Weinfeld favors the Septuagint and notes that in the Sephira treatise, anyone hearing of conspiracy is required to report it. And Pacian of Barcelona, who lived in the 4th century CE, writes, do you see then that this was not said about penitents, but about those who not only themselves preserve in wickedness, but also do not cease to put obstacles in our way? It is these very ones, however dear they may be, that must be relinquished. However useful they seem, they must be abandoned. On verse 10, which is 11, stone them to death, Nelson comments, stoning, prescribed also in 21 verses 18 to 21, 22, 20 to 21, and 23 to 24, seems to have been a social mechanism for acting out mass anger and revulsion, seen it in Exodus 17:4, Numbers 14:10, and 1 Samuel 36. At the same time, stoning demonstrates the community's non-involvement in and disapproval of a criminal act and eliminates the dangers of a collective guilt that threatened the safety of the whole community. In verse 12, 11 in the Old Testament, execution is motivated by a uniquely Deuteronomic formula of deterrence found in 17:13, 19:20, and 21:21. This crime is linked to that of the first case by being termed a wicked thing among you. Verse 11, which is 12, Lundbom comments, capital punishment here and in 17:13 and 21:21 is believed to have a deterrent function. David Daube, commenting on this line, says the force of public example is particularly appreciated in a shame culture. The present statement follows capital sentences 4 times in Deuteronomy, here in 17:13, 19:20, and 21:21. Jesus, pardoning words to the woman caught in adultery, even though no stoning took place, were nevertheless, quote, go and do not sin again, end quote, in John 8:11.
Also important to note that's not original to the text.
Love those add-ins.
Cool.
Hey, it's people wanted to do their own fan fiction, and it's honestly not the worst one they did.
Is that the pericope adultery or whatever?
Yeah.
On verse 13, which is 14, troublemakers. In Hebrew, it's Bnei Belial, literally the sons of Belial. Seen in the Vulgate, the Samaritan text, which according to Samaritan tradition, Baalil is a demon who influences the heart, which is cool, and the KJV. The Septuagint reads lawless men, and Targum-onkelos evil men. Rashi, based on Sifrei Deuteronomy 93, writes that Belial derives from Beliol, without yoke, i.e., as they have cast off the yoke of heaven. And Tigay comments, the precise meaning of Belial is uncertain. Various antisocial types are called Bnei Belial, such as murderers and rapists, false witnesses, rebels, corrupt priests, drunks, ingrates, boors, and the selfish. Many scholars think that Belial is a compound noun consisting of Beli, without, and a noun Ya'al, which refers to some positive quality such as value or honor. Thus, Bnei Belial may mean useless or dishonorable men. The question is complicated by the fact that Belial is also used as a term for death or the netherworld, seen in 2 Samuel 22:5, which calls for quite a different etymology, such as the land that, quote, the land from which one does not come up, end quote, Bal Ya'al, or the swallower, from Bet Lamed Ein, swallow. This meaning is reflected in Belial, a name of Satan, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, War Scroll column 1, line 1, the Pseudepigrapha, Jubilees 120, and Testament of Reuben 4:7, and the Christian Scriptures, 2 Corinthians 6:15. The two meanings of Belial may be unrelated and they may be homonyms, but it is conceivable that the term originally meant the netherworld, and that Bnei Belial meant denizens of the netherworld, or demons, and then evildoers and scoundrels.
So the demons are scoundrels because they don't swallow?
God hates a spitter.
No. Like, he wants you to take him inside of you, so.
Oh, God. Okay, on verse 14, which is 15, you must inquire, probe, and investigate. In Hebrew, it's vedarashta, vechakarta, vesha'alta. Tigay comments, the use of three verbs for investigating instead of one as elsewhere, as in 17:4 and 19:18, and three phrases to indicate that the charge is confirmed, indicates the need for extreme care in the cases. Halachic exegesis in the Sifrei Deuteronomy 93 and Talmud Sanhedrin 40a required that witnesses answer 7 questions about time and place in order to prove their presence at the scene of the crime, and that they all agree about other details, such as the identity of the deity worshipped and the rite that was performed, or, in the case of a murder, the weapon used, and the clothing worn by both victim and killer. Such procedures made a sentence of capital punishment virtually impossible. On verse 15, which is 16, Rashi writes, if you are unable to execute them by the method specified by Scripture for them, execute them by another method.
I have to appreciate that the Jews added on to their laws in ways which made it impossible for them to be quite as evil and violent as God originally intended them to be. That is to the credit of the Jewish people. Good job.
I mean, it's possible that the scripture was written when they were already keeping these sort of laws where it was like you had this like tough system, and then the books were written like by people that weren't necessarily people working in law.
Oh, I think it was cut off.
And we do get hints of this sort of perspective from other, like from the Greco-Roman world. I think of when I read this chapter, I think of Socrates. Well, Plato's criticism of Socrates in how his lack of worship of the gods was considered like a crime against the state. because like if you refuse the worship of the God of your nation or your village or whatever, you're depriving the benefits and the blessings, or you're causing the drought or whatever. So it's a big deal. And I think that's why it was made punishable by death here, because you could literally affect the entire nation because of your own selfish, evil.
If
sin.
the gods were not appeased, people could starve, plagues, all the rest of it. Yeah.
Two-headed cows, cats, and dogs lying together.
Yeah. So Nelson comments about the verse that I mentioned. Verse 15 moves away from capital punishment to sacred war, since this case no longer deals with an individual malefactor, but an entire community capable of resistance. The language of political treaty appears once more. The apostate town becomes the object of sacred war, dealt with as though it were an element of the pagan nations of the land, as seen in 7:1, 25-26, and 20:16-18. Judges 20 reflects a similar internal sacred war against Israelites who have violated fundamental community norms, end quote. The Septuagint omits the phrase, and its livestock by the sword, and the Vulgate omits by the sword. McCarthy proposed several motives for the Septuagint's omission. That cattle was already included in all, quote, all that is in it, end quote. The phrase with the edge of the sword is already expressed, and the formal inclusion of cattle contradicts 2:34-35 and 3:7. And finally, on 17, which is 18, then the Lord will turn from his fierce anger. David Cohen-Zemach proposed that this hints to the anxiety from the spread of idolatry from the days of Manasseh, as seen in 2 Kings 23-26. Lundbom notes that after judgment, Yahweh turns from his anger, as seen in Joshua 7:26, and mercy is granted. The narrator emphasizes in the repetition that mercy will indeed be shown once the punishment is carried out.
Mercy after punishment. That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, it seems to be like if you don't kill the idolatrous city or whatever, then you'll probably get punished yourself. By God,
that's called aftercare in BDSM.
Yes.
Oh no.
Oh, honey, aftercare is only for people who care about big fancy words like consent. Stop. God is clearly not one of those people.
Yeah. The only aftercare that God believes in is this should be between us.
Ashley Madison?
Like,
Hey.
this between us, whatever the word is. Yeah.
Yeah.
My favorite is like when the angel tells Mary, "Don't worry, your son will be great." So
that's great. Okay. Chapter 14, I think Aaron will love, because we're repeating Leviticus 11, kinda. There are some variations.
There's like two words that are different, and I think there's even a commentary. I think Rashi or Eerdmans was like, why did God need to repeat all of this stuff in Deuteronomy? To include these two words.
Yeah, I think I do have this as well.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, Aaron. You can.
Yes.
Can you please read Deuteronomy 14?
Oh, you want me to go ahead and read it? I was going to offer to have Mark do it.
Sure.
Oh, sure. I mean, it's usually you would do the second, but sure.
It's usually me, yeah, but he hasn't done one, or I think he's done once. So I was going to ask if you wanted to do this one.
Sure.
Read up to, where is it? 21.
Okay. You are the children of the Lord your God. You shall not gash yourselves or shave the front of your heads because of the dead. For you are people consecrated to the Lord your God. The Lord your God chose you from among other peoples on earth to be his treasured people, consecrated to God, and all must attain a quasi-priestly level of holiness. Wait,
what?
I'm sorry.
Wait. You're reading commentary, I believe.
Yes, my bad.
Oh.
All right. Verse 3. You shall not eat anything abhorrent. These are the animals that you may eat: the ox, the sheep, and the goat, the deer, the gazelle, the roebuck, the wild goat, the ibex, the antelope, the mountain sheep, and any other animal that has true hoofs, which are cleft in two and bring up the and brings up the cod, such you may eat. But the following, which do bring up the cud, or have true hoofs, which are cleft through, you may not eat: the camel, the hare, and the daemon. For although they bring up the cud, they have no true hooves. They're unclean for you. Also the swine, for although it has true hooves, it doesn't bring up the cud, is unclean for you. You shall not eat of their flesh, or touch their carcasses. These you may eat of all that live in the water. You may eat anything that has fins and scales, but you may not eat anything that has no fins and scales. It is unclean for you. You may eat any clean bird. The following you may not eat: the eagle, the vulture, and the black vulture, the kite, the falcon, and the buzzard of any variety, every variety of raven, the ostrich, the nighthawk, the seagull, and the hawk of any variety, the little owl, the great owl, and the white owl, the pelican, the bustard, and the cormorant, the stork, any variety of heron or hoopoe, and the bat. All winged swarming things are unclean for you. They may not be eaten. You may only eat clean winged creatures. You shall not eat anything that has died a natural death. Give it to the stranger in your community to eat, or you may sell it to a foreigner. For you are people consecrated to the Lord your God. You shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk.
It's just rude.
So don't eat roadkill. Give it to the poor immigrants.
Yes.
That was weird.
Well, not necessarily.
And bats are birds.
Not necessarily roadkill, but like any sort of animal that died from natural causes. Because
did your list mention the hart, the stag, the wild goat, the dishon, the oryx, and the wild sheep?
Well, it's because it's a different translation.
Different.
Yeah, it's different. I mean,
remember, animals.
I have actually the one I have actually has.
Yeah, and when it says variety, the KJV releases as kind. It's using the word mean.
Yachmo.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Ken Hovind was right.
Yeah.
What?
Multiple
what I've missed in the list is dinosaurs, because according to Ken Ham, we ate all the dinosaurs after the flood. So why aren't they mentioned?
Those are the forbidden. Well, technically they are the forbidden ones.
They can't be.
Dinosaurs are probably kosher.
They can't be forbidden.
Well,
Noah ate them all.
Depends.
Oh, okay. I'm stealing a comment.
Well, but
John 73. John says, "You may eat the coconut. The swallow is gripping by its husk, but not the bird itself." I'm glad.
But is it an African swallow or a European swallow?
Well, African
apparently we cannot eat yeti. Do y'all know what the yeti are?
Gigantopithecus Himalayas or something like that?
Yeah, because verse 3 in my translation says, "Thou shalt not eat any abominable thing."
Yes.
Yeah. My translation has a giraffe as a clean animal, which it is technically, but it's interesting they put it in the list.
I do think it's funny that the cleft hoof of the goat has become a sign of diabolism when it's actually a sign of things you're allowed to eat, apparently. So
yeah. So the devil is clean.
Yeah.
Little confused about that. So Eric Wander gifted 1 RN Raw membership. Bruno Zeigert offers $10 Canadian, says, RN Raw, on your video Madhouse Speaker 6, I left a comment. There's a reply from you, ostensibly, that I won a prize. Is this legit, or is someone scamming me? I don't remember anybody winning a prize.
There's a lot of scams like that all over YouTube. Lots of clone channels, sock accounts pretending to be people. Several of the larger channels, Sir Sick and Logic, I think, have notices in their descriptions lately. If you see a thing saying you've won a prize, it's a scam. If you see a thing saying, message me on Telegram, it's a scam. There's a ton of these lately.
If you see a whole conversation where the first one is like, I don't know how to make money, and then there's someone says, this person's really good, and they use blah blah blah, and then everyone is agreeing, all of those are bots.
Gotcha. All right, and then Eric 86 says, when the Bible says unclean animal, does it mean spiritual unclean or literary unclean?
Spiritually, I believe.
Spiritual.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it says you can eat all the clean birds, but apparently you can't eat dirty birds.
Yeah, it's for the most part, it's due to association with like blood or carcasses or something like that. But then they have this thing where it's any animal that divides the hoof and has divides the hoof and has the hoof cleft in two and chews the cud among the animals you may eat. So
yeah, I mean you could translate it as pure animal rather than clean.
Yeah.
It's ceremonially pure. Although there is somewhere in the Middle East, there was a culture or two that used pig toilets, where pigs would literally eat what comes out of you. So that I hope that wasn't all they were fed, but they were fed that. And I mean, it's an inventive way to deal with sewage, but I can understand why some people would observe that and say, yeah, we're not eating pig, which is too bad because bacon is delicious. But I understand that they would be like, nope, 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 nope. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Do not want.
Do not eat out of the toilet. No.
I would say that.
But yeah,
SJL says sea snakes have scales but no fins. Clean or unclean? May be problematic for other reasons.
Not clean. They must have fins and scales, and also
They must have
think a
fins
sea
and
snake
scales.
would be considered.
Okay, so your shrimp scampi and your jambalaya,
Any
all
seafood, nope.
Nope. Nope.
Yeah.
No.
Snow crab.
Things.
No.
Okay.
But if you do happen to accidentally eat some lobster, you can always go to the tent of meeting and, bring a ram or a couple of turtle doves or something and make atonement, right?
Should we tell him?
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, you heard about the Romans?
Then Trevor and Wright says it is possible in the Bible. Did I? Bruno Zygerts offers $2 Canadian and says, thanks. I thought it was fishy. Yeah, and Trevor and Wright says, is it possible in the Bible someone can be both a prophet and a priest? Are the Deuteronomic texts used to promote the continuation of the priesthood?
Yes and yes.
Yes, definitely.
I don't know.
Eric Wander
named prophets who are.
Then Eric Wander says, all flying insects are unclean for you. Do not eat them. But in Leviticus 11, you can eat locusts, beetles, and grasshoppers. Is this a contradiction? Were some insects seen as birds?
All winged swarming things, it says.
So every flying insect is impure to you. Sorry.
I just I don't know if my internet cut out or what it was. Did we get to the one from Trevor and Wright?
Yes.
Yeah.
We missed you.
Yeah, we did. You want to say something about it? The priests being prophets.
We're on.
Yeah,
Lawrence, we're on Revelations now.
Oh, we're on. Oh shit. Okay.
Skip to the
Damn it, Nero.
Yeah, the Deuteronomistic texts are they are used primarily to, well, first of all, to justify a whole bunch of shit that happened to the Israelites, and if we consider some of this stuff early enough, I mean, it would still have the same function, just not under the Babylonians, under the Assyrians. But the let's see, are they used to promote the continuation of the priesthood? I mean, in some ways, sure, yeah. This would be like, priesthood in a new light, I guess. But even then, you still have the other strand that I believe would have been concurrent. So, or even slightly later. But the thing is, you'd have those two different traditions of priesthood.
I mean, this was written by priests who were trying to solidify their power in the temple specifically, but they also needed the prophets because a lot of people believed in certain prophets and had traditions associated with them. So they kind of had to fold it in, you know?
No.
There's another comment, Aaron.
Okay. Rachel Light.
We didn't
All
really
the animals.
answer the.
Oh,
What?
Sorry, we didn't really answer the first one about the locusts.
yeah, I have a comment on this. It basically is about winged insects.
Yeah. So the word that is normally the word that's normally translated as insect is
Sherrits.
sharets, which means creeping thing. So when it says you may eat every winged creeping thing, it's normally referring to flies. But I think even Rashi says that includes the species of locusts which are not clean, according to.
But doesn't that also include bats?
So bats
No,
would be
they are
under
birds.
regular winged creatures, not winged creeping creatures.
Yeah, they're under birds. That's right. That's so stupid.
Yeah, but the
they are also
bird
under
just means
swarming
wings.
things.
Yeah, but bats are also swarming things and they're creeping things. You ever seen them walk around?
They don't
No,
look really
no. It refers to I've talked about this in Leviticus 11.
Isn't good.
it refers to like small, like I've
Yeah,
heard of this.
flies,
in
gnats,
11.
midges, that sort of thing. It's
creepy
kind of
crawlies.
silly,
Smaller.
Yeah.
Those that
So we're
multiply.
arguing over whether a bat is a bird, a locust, or some other form of insect.
Yeah,
the word that is translated as
gonna make your head explode, Aaron.
The word that's translated the word that in the English Bible is translated is bird. The original, it just means winged thing. So bats are winged things, include as well as what we would call birds. They're talking about what's the word? The classification system isn't based on where they come from, who related to who. It's based on what they do. So fish, it's not fish. It's things that live in the sea. And birds aren't birds. It's things that fly. So yeah.
That's why whales and
Doesn't
dolphins
match
are also
our
fish.
system.
And so are penguins by this rule.
Imagine if they had a platypus.
I mean,
They probably didn't need to.
They would have exploded.
They lived
But
in a world.
Penguins have scales on their feet.
Hmm.
do they indeed?
Yes,
And one
their-
could argue
and
that
their
their
wings
Are flippers fins?
Yes. So that makes penguins into fish.
Maybe. And a
And
kosher.
they're
thus clean
cannibals.
to eat. But are they clean birds? Because I don't know what clean means.
So yeah, we don't.
all
The rabbis don't know what the clean birds are.
They
so
just
they
list the Bible only listing.
Arn, you can't
list
call
what the
penguins.
unclean ones are, and we don't know what they are.
Arn, you can't call penguins fish because you're ruining the Fridays for all the Catholics.
No, rabbits are fish. So Jews these days will, when it comes to birds, only eat birds that they have a tradition of eating. So practically that is chicken, turkey, duck, and goose, quail. Yeah.
Wasn't there a big debate over whether turkeys were kosher or not when they were discovered?
Yes. Because they're from America, so there isn't really a tradition. But because it was so popular and they were missing out on a lot of meat, I guess.
So
the rabbis were like, well, it's clean. It's very similar to a chicken.
I think so.
They allowed it, but there are certain families that don't eat turkey.
I think so. Americans can still have their turducken for Christmas.
No, that is an abomination.
Christmas is an abomination too.
There's a turkey with a duck with a chicken inside.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, turkey, duck, chicken. It's
I think that would
really
be not kosher. I would say that's technically kosher, but not allowed because it is
anal,
an abomination.
But it's an aroma pleasing to the Lord.
Oh, I still love when Epic Mealtime
Only if you completely
did,
burn
like,
it.
a turducken with a pheasant at the core and wrapped a whole pig around it. That was
That's
definitely
impressive.
not kosher.
So
Epic
Rachel
Mealtime
Light,
is gluttony.
Rachel Light says all the animals that aren't on that list, are they considered clean? Pink flamingos and walrus and anything from the bear family, polar bears, that I would.
Well, bears walk on paws, so no. In Leviticus 11.
It's kind of like the if it's a tetrapod, then it needs to have what's the word? And I don't mean like the technical term, just animals with 4 limbs.
We're talking about the
so not
Bible. I didn't
not
think you meant specifically
yeah. So
technically.
so probably not including, but probably doesn't include birds either. It must have split hooves and choose a cud. So bears are not kosher. Birds, like I said, they don't know which ones are kosher, which ones are not. Some say it was based on
But
on if it
Vulcans are
eats.
kosher.
But
Okay.
vultures are not.
Yeah, so birds, they think it might have been based on like carnivores versus herbivores. If they're carnivores, they're unclean. But turkeys eat whatever they want. So
Bruno Zeigertz offers $5 Canadian, says eating bats is okay. So Ozzy Osbourne didn't sin, but
no,
I don't
it's
think
one of
eating
the
bats is
unclean.
okay.
Yeah, it's named as unclean. Definitely.
Yeah.
Given just what we've read so far of God, I'm going to assume that anything that isn't specifically permitted is forbidden and he'll kill you. So just don't.
Ah, it's like
Just
the
err on
American
side.
law system.
Forgiveness is
Right?
not easier to get than permission with this asshole.
Notice there are
that's kind
no
of
forbidden vegetables.
no. Only the fruit of a couple of trees.
Then Matt, I don't even know what that is. We'll have to go into that later. Matt White says, Aren't penguins are dinosaurs and beavers have scaled tails, swim and crawl. Mind blown. Beavers have scoots,
Oh, maybe that's
not
why
actually
they're.
scales. And
Was
it
it
may be.
beavers that they?
I have to be careful about this because the bird's legs might be scoots instead of scales too. I have to look into that. There's a subtle difference. And
So
then
would-
Satan 616 says, maybe the Book of Mormon says that Israelite American natives ate turkeys.
It could settle the issue, yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows? So would Baba Yaga's house be considered clean?
To eat her house?
Yes, because it's it's got the legs of a chicken, and
Oh, that's right.
well, it doesn't fly though. So
It's that chicken
Yeah, I was
wing.
gonna say like maybe split hoofs are seen as diabolic in Christianity, but in Judaism, demons normally have chicken feet.
Oh.
And I remember being like learning a story about how like Hitler was actually a demon, and he used to wear boots that were nailed on so that no one could take his boots off and see his chicken feet.
That's amazing. I never heard
I
of
love
that.
it.
I don't know where it comes from, but yeah,
I should
it
look
might
it
have been a
up.
different person.
that's a mental image.
I should look it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
I would watch a sitcom of Hitler just being paranoid that someone's gonna see his chicken feet.
Leg day every day. And the 2 trees I was talking about was the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. So that's the only forbidden fruit.
It wasn't the 2 trees of Valinor?
Which is interesting. You think about it, like there's nowhere in the Bible does it forbid
different
any
mythology,
plant matter.
yeah.
You can have a
Better.
plant-based diet. A plant-based diet is completely kosher, but Muslims don't have alcohol, and Mormons don't have coffee. So they're definitely adding in that respect.
And
Oh, but they
Christians
do
are
drink a lot of
supposed to
Dr. Pepper,
chastity.
though.
And there's no prohibition against any kind of mushroom, magic or otherwise.
Yeah.
So
We used to have
aside from
a-
his coach.
You have one
We
more
used to have a
comment.
soft drink here. We used to have a soft drink here called Jolt, which advertised all the sugar and twice the caffeine.
It was super effective too.
Yeah. So Daniel Gable said, when I was a 7DA,
Seventh
When
Day
I was-
Adventist.
Yeah.
okay, good. Thank you. They considered ducks to be unclean.
That's
Okay.
Well, we know
xenophobic.
that a duck weighs as much as a witch because they both float.
All right.
Okay.
Mark,
Um,
we're not done with this, right?
No,
No.
I have commentary.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately. So verses 1 through 2. Nelson comments, gashing and making bold spots are mourning practices known from comparative sources and the prophets. Such actions Such actions express the strong emotions of bereavement and also seem to have been practiced to honor one's ancestors and perhaps keep their ghosts at bay. Such rites were forbidden to priests as part of their vocation of holiness, as in Leviticus 19 verses 27 to 28. And here, the ban is extended to the lay populace as a holy people. Israel considered the sphere of the dead to be an unclean realm, incompatible with holiness, under the sway of powers outside the arena of Yahweh's rule. What is more, mourning activities were part of the cult of other gods, Baal in 1 Kings 18:28 and Hosea 7:14, and Tammuz in Ezekiel 8:14. Motivating this prohibition on the basis of Israel's sonship, quote unquote, is especially appropriate for a custom so profoundly involved with kingship concerns. Note the emphatic order that starts verse 1. Children you are of Yahweh. Now, I included a lot of ancient Christian commentary on this. These are some of them are originally from like Leviticus, but I just found them absolutely hilarious. So, beginning from verse 4 to 5, Ambrose in the Patriarchs 1156 writes, "The animals that are clean according to the law have horns, for the law is spiritual. Those who can repel the enticements of this world through the word of God and the observance of virtues seem to be protected by horns upon their heads, so to speak, as if by weapons. And with good reason, the wonderful power of discourse that incites the good soldiers of Christ to battle, as that we may carry back the spoils from our enemy the devil, is called a horn, trumpet." Psalms 98:6.
So, clean things have cloven hooves, and sacred beasts have horns. Do we have anything about red skin and a British accent? Because we're 90% of the way to Tim Curry here.
Well, the pitchfork could be a sign of the Trinity, so...
Actually, I asked Joe Ensley, the Gospelologian guy. I had him on when we had a chat, and I asked him, what the hell is the Trinity? I do not understand it. And he says the easiest way to explain it is it's like a pitchfork. It's one thing with 3 points. And I'm like, really?
Yeah, oh my God.
That's a heresy.
It's such a poor Christological view. I mean, I've said this before. I have heard Christological views that are at least internally consistent. That one isn't. So.
And that confirmed.
Yeah, no, that's actually what is it? Not modalism, partialism. It's a heresy that was definitively, just thrown aside by the church. Basically, all of the examples that are given, the egg, the yolk, the water, it's steam and water and liquid and ice, it's all, that's modalism. They're all heresies. Basically what the Trinity is a direct contradiction of the first law of logic, that a thing cannot be both A and not A. It keeps you irrational so that you place faith above reason, and thus are men enslaved.
Honestly, Arian's view made some sense because he was like, hey, Jesus is just a guy. He's just like his prophet, and and so that view is internally consistent. And then you'd have other views where you have, I forget what it's called, but you have the Godhead, and then from God comes Jesus, he's emanating from the Father, and then the Holy Spirit emanates from that.
Now, see, I had to take the point that Jesus always, only, ever described God as someone else, somewhere else, who could do things Jesus couldn't do, and who knew things Jesus didn't know.
Right, exactly. Because he's specific. They are definitely separate because of the whole only the Father knows.
Yep.
So it's very clear, and the thing is, because the texts that we're looking at they have their own Christological viewpoints. It's been argued that the Gospel of Mark was originally an adoptionist text. So if the Gospel of Mark was an adoptionist text, and then you have the Johannine works having an entirely different Christology, and then Matthew and Luke have pretty similar Christologies, you're going to wind up with contradictions. You're going to wind up with issues in constructing a Trinity, which, by the way, the inclusion of the Trinity, we did cover this in our episode on what was it? It was 1 John 5:6-7 or 6-8. That's the only place where with the explicit reference of the Trinity doctrine, these three are one, and that is a very well-known later addition. So the the Christological controversies, they do have quite the history. I've done quite a lot of videos on that if you're interested. So I did like the brief history of the Trinity video. I've done videos on many of the early church councils, and that's a continuing series. But if you're interested in how they argued for their positions, how they derived their positions, and kind of who was declared a heretic and why, you can go watch that series. But that's all in there. It's a really messy history.
It's very messy. I do recommend the series. It's awesome. I haven't seen it all. I want to see more. But also there was a little bit of you're all right, but only partially.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
God is, Jesus is totally human and totally divine, and he's 100% everything, and also the Trinity. So it was at some level, and of course it was more complex than this, but at some level it was just fine. You're all right. Shut up. But there was a lot more.
The humans can't comprehend it so far beyond, so just stop trying.
Yeah. Well, that's always the best way to shut everyone up. Just, you're all right.
Orin, you are
and
muted.
Can't understand.
You are muted, Orin. There you go.
Yeah, no wonder everybody's talking over me.
Yeah.
So the way I was taught it in college was like the Ebionites and the Docetics are both arguing that Jesus is 100% divine, was never here in the human form, because he's a God. Which means he's completely spiritual, not existing in the real world. And then the other argument is that he's 100% man, so he's really here, but he can't be God. And so we have that argument. So well, fine, he's 100% both.
Right.
And I'm going to give 150% tomorrow, Coach.
Yeah, the whole 100% both, because in their theology it makes sense that you would have to be both, because in order to redeem the sins of man, you have to be a man. But in order to be the agent that does the redeeming act, you need to be divine. So you need to not take away anything from divinity, and you need to not take away anything from humanity. That's why it had to be. Because if you go into suffering servant theology and stuff like that, the redeemer, the person who is given up as this as a paschal sacrifice, has to be of the same as Adam. So he has to be man, but he also has to be God, because that's who can actually do the redemption.
But
so,
he's not actually doing the redemption, though. He's being sacrificed, but he doesn't wanna. Father, why have you forsaken me, and all of this stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, take this step away. Not that I will it, but that you will it, because we're both the same person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry that I'm interjecting.
Right.
I think we are diverging from the subject. I have no idea how we got to the Holy Trinity. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame because I wanted to hear you.
It was the pitchfork thing. I was like, actually, I've met a guy who says this.
Okay.
I have
did
to go now. I have to go now and join my family for lighting the menorah. So,
Happy Hanukkah.
where some people say the Chanukia. All right, see you. Bye-bye.
Make sure to tip over the menorah. See you.
Hi, Isaac. So similarly, Bede on the Tabernacle 3:11 argued that the horns of clean animals symbolize strength in faith and being unconquered in the battle with vices, which is nice. So on verse 5, so there are 3 animals that are not really identified. So the first is the ibex. I'm reading from the NIV version. In Hebrew, it's dishon. These are animals, the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th. So the 5th is the ibex, in Hebrew, dishon. Septuagint, Vulgate, and KJV read pygarg, I think it's how you say it, i.e., a white-rumped antelope common to North Africa. The Peshitta and Targums read Rima, i.e., oryx. Sade Gaon renders Aroi, which is the Barbary sheep. Lundbom writes that it could be the same animal as the Akkadian Dashu, which is the buck of a gazelle or goat. And the antelope, the Hebrew is Teo. Septuagint and Vulgate read oryx. Targums and Rashi read wild ox. Peshitta and Sade Gaon read ibex. According to Tigay, most zoologists think that Tau is the bubal, i.e., the African hartebeest. And the mountain sheep, in Hebrew it's zamer. The identification of this animal is uncertain, and the Septuagint, Vulgate, and Sade Gaon render giraffe, interestingly enough. Lundbom, however, rejects this since giraffes are native only to Africa. Peshitta and KJV read camois, and Lundbom notes that Henry Baker Tristram rejected this since the camois is the antelope of Central Europe and unknown in Canaan. Instead, he rendered wild mountain sheep. This rendition is supported by Lundbom and Nelson.
Okay.
On verses 6 through 8, this is a variation of Leviticus 11 verses 46. Rashi asks why this section was repeated. Based on Talmud Chulin 63b, he writes that the animals are repeated because of the dormitory and the fowl because of the re'eh, which is not listed in Leviticus. Weinfeld postulated that this section was copied from a priestly source. This can explain the term touch their carcasses in verse 8, which doesn't fit the spirit of this chapter and even of Deuteronomy, which avoids dealing with priestly rituals. Lundbom, however, notes that most scholars take Leviticus 11 to be an expansion of Deuteronomy 14.
Okay.
Now, on verse 8, Clement of Alexandria in Christ the Educator 3:1175 writes, "The all-wise educator by the lips of Moses compared association with corrupt men to living with swine when he forbade the ancient people to partake of swine. He made it plain in those words that they who invoke God should not seek the company of the unclean, who, like swine, revel in bodily pleasures and filthy habits of life and impure delights, itching for evil-minded pleasures of sex."
I didn't even see that as a sexual reference. I was getting hungry there. I was just thinking the way they advertise it, instead of doing ham and pork chops, because that doesn't sound that appealing, really, the way that they advertise. But you partake in swine.
Yes.
I'm making bacon for lunch. Fuck Yahweh.
You know, making bacon is a euphemism, right?
Oh, well, yeah, I didn't know that. I was literally just talking about pig this time. But, maybe another time.
Yeah. Yeah, I also have another, there's another comment by him, which is, it's a bit higher English for some reason. "For the soul is the emblem of voluptuous and unclean lust of food, and lecherous and filthy licentiousness in venery, always prurient and material, and lying in the mire and fattening for slaughter and destruction."
And you're going to write my menu if I open a restaurant. I want it all written like this.
Lecherous is the correct pronunciation.
Licentious burgers.
So on verses 9 through 11, Gregory the Great in Homily 31 writes, "Believing people are forbidden to use fish without its fins for food. Fish with fins and scales even leap up above above the water. What do the fish with fins represent if not chosen souls? They alone pass over into the body of the heavenly church." On verse 11, Tigay comments, "It is generally presumed that all birds not listed as impure were permissible. Halachic exegesis did not accept these presumptions, but identified characteristics common to all the forbidden birds and allowed only those that do not display these characteristics. In practice, only a limited number of birds and their eggs are considered permissible. Today, most Jewish legal scholars in Hebrew poskim decree that in order for a fowl to be permissible to eat, there should be a continuous tradition of eating it, and so there's no need to check for any kosher signs, end quote. And Clement of Alexandria, in Christ the Educator 3:1175, took the forbidden birds to be a metaphor to avoid those who plunder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, birds are pirates?
You could say that.
Are
One thing I want to
Where's the
say
parrot?
before we move away from the whole list of holy animals and whatnot, that I've come across research where they talk about how the pig was a sacred animal in Egypt, in ancient Egypt.
Hmm.
And it was part of a cult to the god Set. So I just think it's interesting how like this thing gets banned, and this whole contrast between Egypt and Pharaoh and all these things that are bad and evil, and then that being a coincidence could be. I don't know.
Well, the strange thing is the reason why, because it's so inconsistent. I mean, so it doesn't chew cud. What's that got to do with anything? It's clean if there's a cultural history of people eating it. So bats are unclean until we find somebody that has a cultural history of eating flying foxes.
It's Christian theologians will say that there's symbolism to it, that God wants his people to be pure. Same reason they're not allowed to plant different grains in the same field. That, they should remain unstained and restricted into the just so boxes. And I mean, it's honestly a terrible way to do farming as well. It's really dumb.
And pork, another reason they might have forbidden it is because it tastes so much like human flesh.
I have heard
Pork.
that. Long pig. We are long pig. I mean, I don't know if that was the reason, but I do notice a tendency here in all the commentaries and the text that if anything gives you any kind of pleasure that you are not deriving directly from devoting it to God, then it is evil and you have to cut it out of your life. And to that I say,
yeah.
So
okay.
So I still have commentary. So on verse 13 about the red kite, the Hebrew it's ra'ah, which is a hapax. Leviticus 11:14 reads da'ah, while the Talmud Chulin 63b followed by Rashi wrote that ra'ah, da'ah are synonyms. Most likely is that ra'ah is a scribal error resulted from dalet and resh looking similar. The Samaritan text reads da'ah, and Volkan and Peshit just omit the word. And on the falcon, in Hebrew, daya, it is not found in Leviticus 11. As noted previously, Talmud Chulin 63b, Rashi, and Sadeh Gaon wrote that this is the same as the ra'ah and the da'ah. Lundbom suggested that daya is a variant spelling of da'ah, and McCarthy notes the opinion of Moran, who regards this word as a gloss. The Septuagint and Samaritan text omit this word.
Wait, this is the opinion of Moran? What?
Moran.
That's what I
knew
thought
you
I
would
heard
do
too.
this. I knew you would do this because you have no respect for scholars, Aaron. Moran.
Pardon me, I'm just being American.
Yep, you are. So now in verse 19, Leviticus 11 verses 20 to 23 adds that go upon all fours. As noted in the Leviticus episode, this could be understood as that go upon at least four. Targums Suda Jonathan is more specific here. And all flies and wasps, and all worms of vegetables and pulse, which come away from materials of food and fly as birds, are unclean to you.
Explain that?
Yeah, it's just more specific. Yeah.
Okay.
On verse 20, Nelson writes that this verse is elliptical and can only be understood considering Leviticus 11 verses 20 to 23, where edible insects, i.e. locusts, are meant. And on verse 21, you may give it to the foreigner, you may sell it to any other foreigner. The first foreigner is ger, and the second is nochri, two different foreigners. So Tigay comments, according to Leviticus 17:14, eating the flesh of animals that die naturally or are torn renders both Israelites and strangers, quote-unquote, impure. Deuteronomy does not require the latter to avoid impurity, since they are not subject to the requirements of holiness that are incumbent upon Israelites. Hence, they
What
may
if
eat
its
the flesh-
death is unnatural?
I haven't finished my commentary.
Okay.
So, hence, they may eat the flesh of animals that die naturally. The distinction between giving the meat to strangers and selling it to foreigners reflects the differring economic statuses of the two classes. Resident aliens were often poor and objects of charity. Non-resident foreigners were normally present in Israel for purposes of trade and were able to support themselves. And about the do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. This decree is found in Exodus 23:19. Cohen-Zemach writes that Deuteronomy removed this decree from its natural context, the ritual of the 3 pilgrimage festivals and ceremonies regarding the fertility of the ground, and placed it in the framework of forbidden foods. He therefore concludes that during the writing of Deuteronomy, this decree lost its original meaning and was interpreted as a kosher law, which is accepted in Judaism to this day. The Targums and Tzaddik on read, "You shall not cook meat with milk," which is, again, how the Jews interpret it. So that's it for this part.
No milk, no meat cereal.
No.
Okay. I've got a comment from Matthew K, who says this makes one wonder how Christians are totally fine with having a Christmas or a Thanksgiving ham, and exactly when those traditions began.
They're not all. I mean, the poor Jehovah's Witnesses take this to the extreme of some of the commentators we're discussing, where anything that has a remotely pagan origin or was ever used by pagans, like everything ever, can't be celebrated because then you're worshiping demons, because pagan, occult, icky bad. So they're not allowed to have holidays or celebrations of any kind, except for the religious ones, which are not fun. There's nothing fun about them.
Yep, no Christmas because it's a birthday, and birthdays are bad.
Right, because a couple people were beheaded during birthdays at some point during the Bible, which means that's a birthday tradition, and it means that you can't have a birthday party.
Well, it
And
also
God will
takes
hate you if you
attention
do.
away from Jehovah, and we cannot have that. You can't be
Oh, yes.
celebrating a person. You need to celebrate Jehovah all the time.
He's just a teeny bit insecure.
Eric Wander offers or gifted 1 RN Raw membership. I really need to figure out what all that means.
English is
Okay.
good.
Right. So where are we in this chapter now? What verse?
22.
22. All right.
Yes.
Mark, do you want to continue?
Got it.
Okay.
You shall set aside every year 1/10 part of all the yield of your sowing that is brought from the field. You shall consume the tithes of your new grain and wine and oil, and the firstlings of your herds and flocks, in the presence of the Lord your God, in the presence where he will choose to establish his name, so that you may learn to revere the Lord your God forever. Should the distance be too great for you, should you be unable to transport them, because the place where the Lord your God has chosen to establish his name is far from you, and because the Lord your God has blessed you, you may convert them into money. Wrap up the money and take it with you to the place that the Lord your God has chosen, and spend the money on anything you want: cattle, sheep, wine, or other intoxicant, or anything you may desire. And you shall feast there in the presence of the Lord your God, and rejoice with your household. But don't neglect the Levite in your community, for he has no hereditary portion as you have. Every 3rd year you shall bring out the full tithe of your yield of that year, but leave it within your settlements. Then the Levite who has no hereditary portion as you have, and the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow in your settlements shall come and eat their fill, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the enterprises that you undertake.
Yeah. So, kind of boring, but
Hello, Isaac. How's your menorah?
Oh, it was quick.
You didn't tip it over?
No. I was given some pajamas.
Wow.
Lovely.
What a Jewish gift.
It's very
Okay.
yeah.
Christmas.
So,
Yeah.
Your mother loves you, Isaac.
No, it was
Gonna
everyone is
sleep
wearing
real well.
matching like Hanukkah
Oh,
pajamas.
matching! Wow.
Just
So
out of
the- I-
curiosity, Isaac, when you guys were lighting a candle, were you thinking about the Virgin Mary bringing the light to the world?
Ew, God.
Isaac,
Bad Christian. Bad.
are you saying lighting the menorah is a pajama party?
No, my family decided to do like a little pajama party tonight. And
Ah,
my cousin's coming as well, and
Peter,
they
stop
start
trying
this.
to corrupt the poor boy.
They just started the night with the lighting, and so I went down for the lighting, and I'll go back again later.
Now, back to this chapter. You're supposed to be doing the dining in the presence of the Lord. How does one dine apart from the Lord? Not in his presence.
I have a comment on this.
Peter,
Okay.
did something happen to the stream?
It might be some.
no.
Is that to do with
I have-
being?
I have no clue what happens.
People?
Okay, well, it's remember though, as Lawrence has pointed out so many times, this is still when God is not omnipresent, when he is still a local deity with a presence in a specific place, who might be aware of things outside of that immediate vicinity. But if you want to respect him, you have to go to his special place and pay attention to him. Which has nothing whatsoever to do with the fact that this was written by the priests of the temple in Jerusalem to entice the people of Israel in the northern kingdom to come and offer all their offerings there where they would benefit from them. It has nothing to do with that. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Yeah.
Okay. And I think what's also in view here is that God can't just be at anywhere, because he needs sacred space for him to be able to not be tainted by our sin and whatnot. So I think part of what the Deuteronomy text is making a clear distinction here, that Yahweh is not to be anywhere because he requires a designated spot where he can be. I think that's where, it talks about his presence here, and it mentions it over and over again that, there has to be this one place. So obviously, an omnipresent God here cannot be in view.
Okay.
There is an idea in rabbinical Judaism that, like, if you have a quorum of 10 men, then like God's presence, I guess, is stronger or something like that. So, and if you dine with 3 people, then also it's also like a different level.
There's a similar scripture in the New Testament where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them, which is Jesus, which allows you to basically set up church wherever you go, as long as you have a few devout people who are conscious of Jesus at that moment. So
Jesus is more omnipresent than Yahweh, because he only
yeah,
requires 3
he's a
to
later version.
Yeah, by
He's
that
an
time.
update.
Yeah, by that time, Yahweh had already gained all the attributes of the other gods.
This is the Windows Vista, Yahweh.
There can be only one.
Okay, I'll start my commentary. On verse 22, Tigay writes that this verse deals with the second tithe, which is given only in the 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 5th years. Verses 28 to 29 deal with the 3rd and 6th year. On the 7th year, no tithe is given, since neither planting nor harvest takes place then. As for of all your fields, he writes, from verse 23, it is clear that this includes wine and oil as well as grains. 2 Chronicles 31:5 implies that tithes were brought from fruit honey and other types of produce as well. The halakha requires that tithes be given from all foodstuffs grown in or on stems rooted in the soil. Sini Mishnah Masarot 1:1. On verse 23, eat the tithe, and Lundbom comments, we do not know precisely when the Israelite farmer brought his tithe to the central sanctuary. It could have been at the Feast of Weeks, the Pentecost, when the first fruits were presented, as seen in 16 verses 9 to 12 and Exodus 23:16, or else at the Feast of Booths, 16 verses 13 to 15 and Exodus 23:16, which is perhaps more likely since this was the ingathering festival at year's end. Tigay, believing it could have been on any occasion when the farmer believes it could have been on any occasion when the farmer made a pilgrimage to the central sanctuary.
Wasn't there a tradition of the three biggest festivals, you had to spend one of them at the temple in Jerusalem? Like
Yom Kippur, right? There were some that are required.
No.
Were they not?
Or like if you couldn't make them all, you would at least try and make one of the three.
Passover.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I got a
Many of
question
them.
that was on that, kind of on that, that showed up on my email. I should probably ask the assembled panel. Somebody emailed me and says, "I'm curious if you have any videos as to why the Christian community is so supportive of what is going on in Palestine right now. Is it because they want the third temple to be built?"
No.
I'm just curious because when I see the amount of destruction
I-
and all in, okay,
With the
yeah.
evangelicals, yes.
As an Israel person, I would rather not discuss it. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't want to bring politics. So
Yeah,
Gotcha.
as a general idea, a lot of Christians consider themselves Zionist because they think it's the right thing to do. But there is definitely an undercurrent of gather them all in one place, the temple will be rebuilt, and then the second covenant will happen. So
It's the extremist conservative types, the scary type Christians who are supporting.
So they're trying to bring back Jesus.
Yeah, they want the apocalypse. And in order for the apocalypse to happen, the third temple has to be rebuilt. In order for that to happen, yada, yada, yada. So they don't really care what atrocities are committed or what is done or who does it, just as long as they get to watch the world burn so that they can feel vindicated.
You know what's really
They're
funny?
Nero.
In in the Old Testament, it's always said that, or not always said, but when they're talking about the Day of Judgment, they have also spoken about the temple that will be there in this new world. In Christian theology, in Revelation, it says specifically that there will be no temple, which I find very interesting.
yeah, I would just say that I mean, like most Israelis, I don't think they want a third temple because they know the repercussions. They're not stupid, and I think they also look a bit like okay at the Christian Zionists because they're like, yeah, we like Israel, but they're also a bit anti-Semites. So
they totally are. They totally are. The
yeah,
phrase,
they care about
support them as the rope supports the hanging man is very apt.
Yeah, they care about Israel for their own beliefs, not because they like Jews.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And what's interesting on the other end is like the more religious Jewish people, like very religious or Hasidic, I think, that they a lot of times will believe in a sort of divine temple that will be built in heaven and then come down from the sky and land on the location. So for us to build it ourselves would be...
Stargate Pyramid, anybody?
Okay, I should come back to my commentary. So so that you may learn to revere the Lord your God. Ibn Ezra, Nachmanides, and Rashbam wrote that by visiting the temple, the priests and judges can teach the people to fear and obey God's commandments. Tigay notes that this interpretation is in line with 31 verses 10 to 13, where it commands to read the Torah at the chosen place every 7 years. He also gives Joseph Herz's opinion that the festive celebration will teach people reverence by keeping them aware of their dependence on God and prevent them from taking their prosperity for granted. On verse 25, take the silver with you. In Hebrew, it's tzarta hakesef beyadecha. The verb tzarta is derived from the root tzadik reish reish, to tie up. And so more accurate will be, you shall tie up the silver in your hand. Lundbom explains that the silver is put in a money bag of some sort and attached to the hand. Compare Proverbs 7:20. Nelson writes that the point of this phrase is to secure and isolate the money to spend it only in the central place. On verse 27, Nelson comments, an explicit reference to local Levites may seek to cushion the negative economic effect of centralization on this group, in that the former use of the tithe to support the local sanctuary had been eliminated, compare 12:12. These particular Levites are specifically those with whom the householder has a neighborly relationship within your towns, end quote. And the Septuagint omits and do not neglect to harmonize this verse with 12:12. And finally, on 29, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands, Tigay comments, Such assurances are given in connection with laws that require economic sacrifice for the sake of the poor, freeing the indentured servant after 6 years, lending to fellow Israelites even close to the remission year and without interest, and leaving overlooked sheaves, olives, grapes for the poor. Lest the Israelites fear that these sacrifices will cause economic hardship, he is assured that, on the contrary, they will ultimately lead to greater prosperity. And that's it from a commentary.
I got a comment from Thomas Susheki that offers $2 and says, so orphans only eat once every 3 years?
Huh?
That's what the comment is.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm not getting it either. I know that this is something before you read the commentary. I don't know. It wasn't that long
I think
ago.
the portion that's set aside would be every year, and presumably you would eat from it all year. But yeah.
Okay.
Maybe he thinks
Right,
they take turns.
Anybody else got any comments on this?
Not me personally. No. I'm
Okay.
done with mine.
So it's all about what you can and can't eat, and none of it is very clear, and none of it makes any real sense. And I'm not getting the feeling that this was written by a single uber galactic cosmic overlord.
Yeah, I would say the
Definitely
one good thing that has come out of that, I guess, comes out from these like food laws is mostly the because of the process of slaughter, and you can't eat like a carcass or whatever. It means that like hunting is just non-existent within like the kosher system. So
Yeah, agriculture.
Hunting.
Agriculture too. They don't have any problem here. There's no prohibitions against eating beans.
Nope.
Or what you just if it's a plant, go ahead. We don't even talk about those. It's like they're not even food.
Passover when you have leaven.
There are rules
Passover,
about plants,
leaven.
but there are about the growing of them.
Man, you guys are making me hungry.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, you can't. Yeah, that's true. I guess you could say it's not kosher to eat like fruit from a tree that is under 3 years old, stuff like that.
Mhm. You can't graft a branch onto another, so apricots are forbidden because that's a peach branch grafted onto an
I think
apple
you
tree
can still
original.
eat them. You can eat them. You just can't. You can't do
You
it.
can't do it yourself.
Yeah,
Considering the way the Three Sisters are grown, beans might be a problem if they were grown with corn stalks and squash plants, because that's having more than one type of seed in a field, which is also forbidden. But did we already read that, or are we going to read that in the future, or both? I can't remember.
The mixing.
I've memorized a lot of shit from the Bible at
we'll read
random
about
times.
we'll read about the mixing again. Yeah, it appears again.
The 3 types of mixing. Yeah, you got like wearing clothing made from linen and wool.
Yeah, we covered it in Leviticus, I believe.
Yeah,
I don't
planting seeds together and plowing with 2 different types of animals, which is seen as a kindness as well.
Yeah.
All right, got one more comment. This is from Matthew K. Says, Aaron, I recently found out you're a fellow heat seeker. Have you tried?
You like spiciness.
Oh, is that what that means? Okay. Have you tried Snakebite Black Mamba 6? If not, I recommend it. Much love to you and your panel. Well, you have to be specific about what you're talking about, because I got 75 snakes in here, and you're asking if I have a Black Mamba.
No. It's
have you tried a snake bite?
It's a spice blend. You carry one around to put in your beer all the time.
Yeah, it's not within arm's reach. Yeah, that little bottle I accidentally left in a diner.
Oh no!
Yeah,
no.
I have a much bigger bottle that doesn't fit in my pocket that I have at home, so that's why I have to order another one. Damn it! Oh well. No, I haven't tried. I haven't tried Black Mamba 6, but yeah, I'll have to look it up. All right, are we all good for Tuesday?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna be doing Deuteronomy 15.
I am not good for Tuesday. I have entirely too many things to do this week. I was gonna take this show off as well, but I agreed to it a while ago, so I wasn't gonna do that. But this week is so hectic. I am so stressed. I'm at the end of my rope. I got 3 hours of sleep last night. I have so many projects that I need to power through, and they're due by the end of the week. So I need basically all the time.
There's I will try and be here Tuesday.
Shut
There's a
up.
possibility I won't. I'm traveling the next day for like, a really long time.
Okay, well, so we're not going to get either of you on Tuesday?
I might be here.
All right. Well, I'm hesitant to do the show without Lawrence. I would have to have he would have to say
I mean,
whether
to be okay. So let's see what's coming up here in these next chapters.
That's the remission, the year of remission, Shemitah on 15.
Let's see, sabbatical
Oh,
year
like the year of
stuff.
Jubilee.
Year.
Firstborn livestock. Passover stuff, more festivals. I think you'll be just fine. A lot of the stuff we already kind of covered before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then I will attempt to do a Tuesday show then.
Yeah, I think you should be fine.
Mark, you gonna be able to join us on Tuesday?
I will try.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope if we got Mark, then maybe I just don't want to. I don't want to be handicapped.
I think you'll be just fine. No, I'm not. I don't really add that much, anyways.
Liar.
He just doesn't want to be left alone with Tom Aaron.
All right. Well, we'll see some of you on Tuesday then, I guess. All right. For Deuteronomy 15.
Yeah.
Right, thank you very much, everybody. Good night.
Bye bye, everybody.
Later.